Glad to be here, and I'm going to share a few stories with you guys this morning. Hopefully, inspire you to some things. I will tell you that I am a graduate of the University of Alabama, and I have my oldest daughter actually just graduated from that orange place up north. All right, and so when I go up there, I can't wear orange. I wear purple. I call that a moral victory. Just can't put on the orange. But I got two kids up in Clemson. And my oldest daughter, she graduated with her accounting degree, and so this August I wanted to take her on a trip. I did get to live overseas for 3 years. It dramatically impacted my life, my worldview, how I think about things. Several years in Russia, some in Cyprus, different areas. And so I wanted to take her on a trip, so I took her to India. And not your normal graduation trip, but I have a really good friend who's an Indian national who lives down south, Bangalore. His name's Stephen Joseph. Not your normal Indian name, but his parents gave him a Christian name, and so I've known this guy for 15 years. So me and Lane, as you can see, we loaded up and we took off to India. And on the way, we flew Qatari Air, so we stopped in Qatar, and I wanted to see the Middle Eastern desert. I did have opportunity to travel a lot in a previous life, and so we stopped there, went to the desert. I think I have a picture here of me and Lana and our driver, Mohammed, who took us dune busting in the desert, which is basically kind of redneck four-wheeling just in the sand. It was great. The best part about it was this guy was from Pakistan. His name was Mohammed. He was wearing full Middle Eastern dress, and he was playing 50 Cent. So, I see every time I see my daughter, I just go 50 Cent, and we laugh. So, anyway, we survived that, and that was a highlight of the trip. We got out of Qatar, and we went into India, and then my friend took me to these villages where he's done medical work for years and years and years. And we've always tried to support him in that, and as we went to these places, there was distinct honor given to us. So much so that as foreigners, when we walked in, you can see one picture, they actually washed our feet, and then they put these incredible flower garlands over us and welcomed us, as though we were the president and the first lady. And so that was a distinct honor, a great highlight of the trip. From there, we went further. I think I have a picture here, Connor, of where we ate breakfast most mornings. You see, we got this hut right here. Literally, the door's like that. You kind of have to climb in so they keep the rain out, and go inside of there and eat great food, which I did for about 10 days. But I've done a lot of traveling. I used to be a pastor of world missions and traveled all the time. And so about 10 days on the road is about all you can handle eating out of huts. And so on the 11th day, you probably see me in a picture there laying down, getting an IV. Which was a highlight of the trip. It was about a 30-hour trip, and so the day before I come back, I think your body's like 98% water, so I lost about 96% of my body, I think. And my friend called his friend, the doctor, over, who made a house call, and he was trying to give me some electrolytes and things of that nature, and I'm like, no, you don't understand. I got to fly 30 hours tomorrow. Like, how many rupees does it take for you to give me an IV? And so he went and got me an IV, got me hydrated, and we got home. And the cool thing was he wouldn't accept payment. He's like, you're our guest here, and they nursed me back to health, put me on the plane. Highlights of the trip: we had a great time. I wanted to make sure that my daughter's worldview wasn't as small as Lexington and Greenville. Lexington and Greenville are great places to be, great places to live. But when you live in an insulated deal, you can have a worldview that's very small, and I wanted the worldview to be very big. I wanted her to see things, the world as it is, and so I took her over there to teach her some of those things because they have great impact in my life, but I wound up learning. Even though I've traveled a lot and been in those scenarios, I wound up learning because the highlight of the trip was not any of those fun things I showed you. The highlight of the trip was the fact that my friend Stephen, who I've known for 15 years. I met him in Malaysia years ago at a younger leaders gathering when we were younger leaders. He took me to this place. I didn't know where we were going. And we went to this fine dress shop in the middle of this chaotic scenario. If you've ever been to India, you understand it's just like take Main Street and triple it and add a whole bunch of street vendors and then throw in like 5 random cows walking up and down the street with no red lights. I mean, it's amazing that people can navigate those waters. And in the midst of that, he took me to this fine dress shop. He said, I'm going to buy you a suit. You're a pastor, you're an elected councilman, me a suit. He bought me this suit. Custom. I was thinking about it. Like, A, I've never had a custom suit. I'm too tight. and I'm not fashion conscious. B, the only other person that ever bought me a suit was my dad. I don't think I ever had a suit. I grew up in a very blue-collar environment. First suit I ever remember having was my junior year of college. My dad said, son, you need to go get a suit so you can go do interviews. And he bought me my very first suit. Steve bought me a suit. It was beautiful. It was honoring. Quite frankly, it was uncomfortable. Because I'm there with my daughter, and she's watching this unfold. He's like, you pick out the material. This guy comes in, he measures you up, and all this is happening, and I'm just sitting there. I'm an engineer, a businessman. I'm just doing the math. I'm going, Steve, don't need to buy me a suit. I mean, how much does this thing cost? Because this guy's got to turn around, he's got to expedite, he's got to do it in 4 days. But Stephen wasn't doing the math. I was doing the math because I'm a Western. Stephen is from the East, and every culture's got something to teach another culture. He wasn't doing the math, he was just happy. He was so happy that finally, after a decade, I had picked up and come. That finally I had come to visit this work that we had supported and we had partnered together in all these years. And he had leveraged his sister, some kind of dentist, and he had leveraged all of his family to work together to make this thing happen because they lived like that. And it was his honor to give me this custom-made suit. And I was humbled, a little uncomfortable, but it was beautiful. And it just reminded me that our culture, we have some things to teach the world. The world's got some things to teach us, and one of them is we don't do honor well. And the reason we don't do honor well is because we do shame well. Like, we have PhDs in shaming folks, public shaming. And some of that is the media that we use, because media shapes the message. But our culture is driving towards public shame. I mean, you could be recently a 21-year-old man who does something great, and somebody will dig something up that you said stupid when you were 16, or maybe you retweeted something, and we'll just public shame the heck out of it, right? Because we're driven towards that shame. Like, if you were ever 16, you said something stupid. You didn't say something stupid when you were 16, you're either lying or crazy. Like, that's just life. I expect you to say stupid things at 16. But our culture tends to drive towards this public shaming, and that's why when we see these displays of honor, they're just kind of shocking. I felt unmasked. I felt vulnerable. I felt like I had just been filleted, because I was just thinking, God, man, I don't show honor like this. I don't understand honor like this, but it motivated me to show more honor. And so my message to all of us today as leaders in our community, leaders in business, in our churches, in our organizations, in government, in education, in every realm, is like there's this deep-seated need for honor that we all have. And if we're not careful, our culture, which likes public shaming, because there's something that it kind of feels like the moral high ground, although it's the moral sludge. It's just like the elementary school playground. But it's easy, because everybody can jump on the public shaming and feel like there's some kind of moral high ground, but there's not. But we push back against that with honor, because listen, we all know that the duty and the responsibility of leadership is to point out that which is right, kind of get rid of the cultural noise and not pay attention to the normal past, but point out that which is right and then inspire people to it. I always say, God said this, not original to me, but he was right. He said, a leader's job is to create momentum. So our job is to create momentum towards honor and stop momentum towards shame. It's not an easy job. And if you do it, you probably won't get publicly shamed. But let history be your judge. It will judge you well. So what does honor look like in our culture? Well, there's like, when I was at Radius, we used to talk about two different things. There's an air war and a ground war. An air war is like shock and awe. You can do a lot in an air war. You can begin a conflict. You can frighten the enemy, but you're never going to win a conflict by air war only. You got to do some ground war. There has to be hand-to-hand combat. You got to actually take territory. And so we do some great things air war-wise as far as displaying and signifying honor. Big awards, I wrote some down, and we have, military has all kinds of awards here at the Chamber. We have the Tailor Award, we have the Order of the Palmetto, we have proclamations we do at the town. We do air war type stuff, but where we really win this battle, if honor is going to overcome shame, it's in the hand-to-hand combat. It's in the ground. How do we inspire our family? How do we inspire our company? How do we inspire our community, our organizations? And so I thought about a few ways just in my own life, how that works out. I wanted to share those with you. Simple things. Ground war. This past Saturday, I just flew in from Michigan. My wife's from Michigan. I just flew from Michigan on Sunday night. My mother-in-law passed away last week, and I did her funeral service on Saturday. And it was the most honoring thing that this lady who knew me as my mother-in-law, and I didn't make her life easy at times. I took her daughter and her grandchildren off to Russia. I did some things I won't even go into. This lady who knows me well, she asked me to do her funeral. It was the most honoring thing. You know what was more honoring is my wife and John Reeves, who's one of my great friends who pastors right here. His wife jumped on a plane and flew to Michigan while her family was at the beach, because we were supposed to be at the beach with them. She flew up there on Friday. She sang 2 songs at that wedding on Saturday. She flew home. It was the most honoring thing in the world. You don't even know what to say to that. I have an exchange student that we hosted about 12 years ago. Her name is Mirgul, and she's from Kyrgyzstan, and she became a Fulbright scholar, went to Kentucky, and of all things, she married a dude from Aiken, which is great. She married this guy from Aiken, and they came by my house about a week and a half ago. They were in town, and she calls me and Carrie Mom and Dad. And she just had a little baby, and she said, y'all need to pick out your grandparent names. We had her in the house for like 11 months, but we followed her. It was incredibly honoring. I'm like, Mirgul, I just turned 50 last week. I'm not ready for the grandparent name. But I am. Because there's honor there. A few weeks ago, I was eating over here at Crib Sandwich Shop with a guy named Daniel Rich, who I've known for 20 years, and he graduated from that orange mess up north. And when he did, he had a degree in forestry, and everybody was trying to get him to take the safe route in life. Everybody wanted him to do what was safe and comfortable. And I'm like, Daniel, man, you're a leader. He had this crazy idea about going to California and trying to figure out how to do something productive in the volleyball world that would be redeeming. And I'm like, listen, like everybody wants you to be safe and everybody's worried about health insurance, but you need to go do something. Because you're a leader. At that time, it was probably 15, 20 years ago. Somehow I found $400 and I handed it to him and I said, man, you go. It's really all I have. And every year he comes back, and it happened a couple weeks ago, and I could never buy lunch. He always takes me to lunch. He always thanks me for believing in something bigger than safety. And you know, and I look at that and I just go, man, I just had such a small part in that. He's FCA director of the entire state of Hawaii now. He's a great young man. Just honor. I tried to honor him, he honored me. I did turn 50 a couple weeks ago, and my kids, they got a jar and they cut up little pieces and they put them in there, and they wrote down 50 ways that you love us. And I'm only supposed to take one a day, like I'm cheating, I don't want to get them all. But the most recent one was you watch world events and you summarize and explain them to us, which I was going, that's a nice way of saying you pontificate at the dinner table a lot about what's going on. But I think they're off now. They got other voices in their ears. They're all at college. And so I think finally, maybe they hear what I'm saying. My wife, Carrie, was a teacher and a coach in our community at various schools for 12 years. And I know through the years, she would get some things that were very honoring. Just little cards, just little pats on the back. And so for us, as leaders in our homes, in our community, in our organizations, we see the macro picture of shame. Shame carries the day. Shame sells. Let's face it. You say sex sells, shame sells. But guess what? Like stuff that's valuable, you don't sell. Stuff that's valuable, you keep. Just because it sells doesn't mean it's valuable. If it sells, it's got a value to it, but things that are really valuable, you keep. Shame sells. But honor is what builds legacy. Honor is what sticks to people. Honor is those things that you can sit down and make a list and you can think through, what does honor look like in my life? Because I have this unique experience and I'm thankful for it. I get to function in the realm of the faith community and in the political realm and in the business realm. And in all those realms, there's always these macro questions. In politics, the question always wants to drive you towards what's expedient and what's popular. In business, it always wants to drive you towards, what's pragmatic, what works, and what's profitable. Nothing wrong with those questions. You don't ask those questions, you're not thinking. You're not analyzing. You got to ask those questions. But then you got to take those questions and you have to filter them through the leadership question of what is right and what is honorable. God help us if we wind up in a world that's just driven by expediency and profit. We see that in some little context, and it gets real ugly because it devalues the dignity of man. But you can ask those questions, but then you filter them through that hard question of what is right and what is honorable. And all you guys and ladies that lead in different organizations, from your family up to some of the biggest organizations in our community, you understand what it means to wrestle with these things. The wrestling never goes away. But it's in that wrestling that we find what's honorable. So my challenge today is very simple. Let's create momentum. Let's create momentum towards that which is honorable. Let's push back on our culture that exalted shame, and let's drive towards that which is honorable. Winston Churchill has this great quote. It's probably kind of arrogant, but he needed to be a little arrogant when he was in World War II. He says, "History will be kind to me, for I intend to write it." I don't know that I could ever say that, but I understand what he was saying. I'm not going to passively sit back and let stuff happen and then whine and moan about it. I intend to make it happen. I intend to drive it. So my encouragement, and it's true when we were doing this thing at Radius, which we continue to do, and in my business in every realm, it's like there's some macro things in our culture that drive us crazy, but we can carry the day by winning the ground war. Hand-to-hand combat. Giving out and receiving honor. Let me close with a story. There was, years ago, I'll never forget it. It was a Saturday, and as they say in Alabama, I was probably feeling about as low as a snake's belly in a wagon rut. You ever heard that one? You ever been there? Sometimes just down. Tough day. And a guy stopped by my house and just stopped and dropped this thing, gave it to my wife. And he gave her this card. This was, I looked, I think it was about 6 years ago, so the event is old. And he gave her this card, and I won't go into all of it, but like, this is not something you sell. This is valuable. These things you keep. He said, Summer, when you married us years ago on that Labor Day and took that time away from your family, we owed you something. I didn't really have anything to give you at that time and was somewhat ashamed. spent so much on other things and didn't have anything to show my appreciation. Should have given you something. Now, this guy was young airman in the military. This was years ago. This was before Radius owned anything other than a few sets of speakers. The office was my couch, and sometimes the Watershed Fellowship would give us space over there. And this guy used to come over there in the mornings when we were having meetings. We used to sit and talk as he was preparing to get married. And I did his marriage, and I never have the expectation of compensation of those things. These days, I tell people I love to speak at weddings and funerals. I love to speak at weddings because they're just beautiful and fun. I love to speak at funerals because everybody's listening. And so I had no expectation. This guy came to my house like 4 or 5 years later, and he left me this card, and he said, I should have given you $500, which he shouldn't have, way too much. All right? He said, therefore, here's the full total, compounded annually at 10%, and it comes to this. Check is enclosed. You are a great shepherdess, and we love you very much. And he enclosed a picture of him and his wife and their kid and said that the other one is on the way. It was an honor. The money was so holy I couldn't keep it. I gave it to my kids. I knew he wanted to give it. I didn't want it. But it was an honor. Then pulled this snake right out of that wagon rut, kind of lifted me up, gave me energy to do what? To try to go and live honorable. To try to be a blessing to somebody else. So listen, a lot of these stories are intensely personal. I asked a bunch of people around me this past week, I said, can you tell me a time when you felt really, really honored? And what did that look like? And some people shared, but they were all intensely personal, not really something I could relate. So I relay mine to you today because here's what I want. I want to be a leader. And I want to inspire you guys to true north in our society that's filled with public shaming and say, let's win the ground war of honor. Let's go to that coach and let's say, hey, your job's really tough. Every decision you make is really hard because a lot of people don't like it, and I just really appreciate it. Never forget it. I hope I inspire some of you to write something down on a card and take it to somebody's house because they had a big voice and they did something significant in your life, and you just want to repay the debt, whether it's 5 or 10 or 15 years later. I hope I inspire you to sit down with your family and to remind them of the good things that they provide in your life. I'm inspired, not because I do these things well, but because I do them so poorly, and I got exposed by my friend Stephen, who does them so well, and inspired me to live a more honorable life. I say with all honesty, it's a great honor for me to get 30 minutes of your time and to hopefully inspire us to build something great here. And I hope that just like Churchill, we would say, hey, this is our territory, and although the world may go crazy, and they may exalt in shame, and they may run everybody down for mistakes of 10 years ago, we won't let that rule, because we will drive towards honor. It's a great honor to be with you guys. Thank you.